Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're looking into the sources all about cosplay. We'll be tracing its journey, really, from what was a pretty niche sci-fi gathering to, well, the global phenomenon it is now. It really challenges our ideas about performance, identity, and some seriously complex craft.
Exactly. We're exploring that blend of costume and play,
Yeah.
going right back through the history, looking at that central tension, between getting it perfectly accurate versus creative freedom,
Right.
and also digging into the huge community behind it all, from like personal expression right up to those high-stakes international contests.
Yeah, and it's easy to think this all kicked off with the internet age, but the actual origin story, it's quite a bit older. We actually need to go back to 1939.
That far back.
Yeah, the first World Science Fiction Convention in New York. That seems to be the first recorded time people showed up in fan costumes.
That's right. Forrest J. Ackerman and Myrtle R. Douglas. They arrived in these futuristic, sort of fanciful outfits they'd made. It was definitely unusual back then, but yeah, it set the stage.
And the hobby just sort of grew steadily from there, didn't it? Especially with things like Star Trek in the 60s driving it.
Absolutely. And then things started getting a bit more formal in the 70s.
Okay.
By 1974, San Diego Comic-Con held its very first official masquerade, with judges, prizes. That really cemented the whole convention contest idea.
Interesting. And at the same time over in Japan, was something similar happening?
Yeah, pretty much simultaneously. Japan was building its own foundation.
Right.
You had fans dressing up at early events like the first comic market Comic-It in the late 70s. It was this mix of global stuff, Western sci-fi, Japanese anime like Gundam. That created a really powerful kind of cultural bridge.
And the creativity back then, even with basic materials. The sources mention this great story from a Shinakon in 1978 in Japan.
Oh, the Tusken Raider, yeah.
Yeah, a fan apparently made a Star Wars Tusken Raider costume using rolls of toilet paper for the bandages.
Incredible resourcefulness, right? That whole spirit of use, whatever you can find, really defined those early days.
It really did, and that spirit carried on into the 80s, which is pretty crucial because that's when we get the actual word for it.
Right, the term cosplay, or kusupure in Japanese. It was coined in 1983 by Nobuyuki Takahashi, a Japanese writer.
Okay, and he coined it after attending a convention.
Yeah, the World Science Fiction Convention in L.A. He felt the Japanese term they used then, masquerade, sounded a bit old-fashioned, maybe too passive.
So what was the significance of cosplay? Just a new label?
No, it was more than that. It was, I think, a conceptual shift. Takahashi wanted to emphasize the play part, the active embodying, the performance of the character. So it moved beyond just wearing a costume to really actively participating in who that character is, their story, their identity.
That makes sense. That shift from just looking the part to being the part, that really sets things up for what we see today. And the biggest accelerator, I guess, had to be the internet.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Digital connection just transformed everything. It turned these, isolated fans into this huge global collaborative network.
Right.
You had early sites like cosplay.com, founded around 2002, and then later platforms like Instagram, TikTok. They just amplified everything. Suddenly, amazing individual projects could go viral, inspiring people everywhere. It became like a global classroom almost for sharing techniques and tutorials.
And you can really track that growth, that globalization, by looking at something like the World Cosplay Summit, the WCS.
Exactly. It launched in 2003 with just, 5 countries invited?
Yeah.
And now it's participants from over 40 nations. That jump really shows how digital sharing just blew the doors open, pushed the craft forward worldwide.
And that professionalization, that push, it leads us right into the core debate within the craft itself. Accuracy versus interpretation, how close does it need to be?
That's the big question, isn't it? For a lot of dedicated cosplayers, this isn't just about sewing, it's practically material science sometimes.
So what makes an accurate build different from just, buying a costume?
It's the sheer detail, and often the engineering involved. Accuracy means intense effort. You're scouring reference images, concept art, screenshots, trying to replicate every single seam, the exact shade of paint, complex shapes. Cosplayers often have to become part tailor, part engineer, part sculptor all at once.
And nailing that accuracy, that's a massive source of pride, right? Especially if you're competing on craftsmanship.
Definitely. But as you know, 100% accuracy, it's often just impossible or wildly impractical. Source material characters don't really obey physics.
No, they really don't. Gravity-defying hair, armor that looks cool but you couldn't actually move in.
Exactly. So the cosplayer has to adapt. They have to manage things like weight, how they're going to walk, dealing with heat inside bulky costumes.
Yeah.
You can't use real metal for giant armor, usually.
So that's where the specialized materials come in, the stuff you hear about like foam and thermoplastics.
Precisely. That's the technical side. EVA foam is huge. It's that dense, lightweight foam you see people cutting, layering, shaping with heat guns to make armor pieces. And then there's Worbla, which is the thermoplastic sheet. You heat it up, it becomes pliable, almost like clay. Great for complex curves, fine details. Modern cosplayers are basically mastering these materials. Plus, tools like Dremels for shaping and sanding, and increasingly, 3D printing for specific parts.
Right. 3D printing must be changing things.
Oh, hugely. It allows for incredibly intricate pieces that would be almost impossible to make by hand traditionally. But it all comes back to creating something lightweight, durable, and detailed that looks right, even if it's not made of the real material.
So the takeaway is it's not just copying, it's adaptation, it's problem solving, making the fantastical work in the real world.
Exactly right. You have to scale things down like an 8-foot sword from a game needs to be manageable for a real person. Or maybe you cleverly hide comfy shoes under Armour boot covers because you'll be on your feet all day at a con.
Practicality matters.
It has to. And this need for adaptation, this flexibility, it naturally opens the door for really creative interpretations. Mashups, reimaginings.
And those often get a lot of buzz. The sources mentioned a great example. Someone combined a very accurate stormtrooper outfit with Freddie Mercury's iconic look.
Yeah, that's brilliant. It respects both fandoms, but adds this layer of fun and personality.
And then you have the other end of the spectrum, like low-cost cosplay.
Oh, he's fantastic. Gained this huge following just using everyday stuff. You mentioned the baguette as a sword earlier. It just proves that imagination and humor can be just as impactful as a massive budget or years of skill.
It really democratizes it, in a way. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Away from the glue guns and the foam towards the person inside the costume, the personal side of it. Why do people pour hundreds, sometimes thousands of hours into this?
That's where it gets really interesting, I think. People often say the character kind of chooses you. It lets them tap into traits they admire, maybe confidence or strength or outspokenness.
So it's a form of identity exploration.
Yeah, very much so. Adam Savage had a great quote about it, something like, "Everything we choose to put on our bodies is part of a narrative and a sense of identity." Cosplay is a really creative, communal way to try on different identities. The costume can be like a shield almost. Someone who's normally shy might feel totally empowered and extroverted as a bold character.
And that experimentation with identity comes through really clearly with crossplay, doesn't it? Playing characters of a different gender.
Absolutely. Crossplay is widely accepted and involves some really skillful adaptation.
Yeah.
You might have people using binders and makeup techniques to present more masculine features, or someone reimagining a male character's armor into, say, an elegant dress form that still reads as powerful and recognizable.
And the community seems really supportive of that.
Overwhelmingly so. The focus is on expressing love for the character, embodying their spirit, not necessarily matching the character's assigned gender from the source material.
Which ties into that core mantra you hear all the time. Anybody can cosplay any character. It feels like a deliberate pushback against any kind of gatekeeping.
It absolutely is. And it's vital for body inclusivity. People adapt costumes to fit their bodies, not the other way around. Shortening things, adding support, making it work. That core idea, if you love a character, you can cosplay as them. That's the heart of it. It actively rejects narrow, restrictive ideas about who should play whom.
And it's incredibly powerful when you see that in action, like cosplayers incorporating mobility aids into their designs.
Yes, seeing a wheelchair transformed into Professor X's chair or other creative integrations, it makes the character belong to the cosplayer, fully and uniquely. It's brilliant.
But playing devil's advocate for a second, with the rise of Instagram, super polished, almost professional level cosplay going viral, doesn't that sometimes create pressure? Maybe even some negativity or judgment about body types or skill levels?
That's a really important point. And yes, that tension exists. The high visibility of these, perfect-looking cosplays online can create unrealistic expectations or lead to unwelcome criticism sometimes.
So how does the community handle that?
Well, that inclusive mantra, cosplay, is for everyone. It's used almost like a shield, a constant reinforcement against that kind of negativity. The core community tries hard to emphasize that passion, effort, and fun matter more than trying to meet some impossible online standard.
And that passion, that effort often leads people to want to show off their work, right? On stage, competitions.
Definitely. That's often the culmination of all that work. And we're talking Serious investment, hundreds of hours, sometimes significant amounts of money poured into a single competitive costume.
So when they get to that competition, what are the judges actually looking for? Is it just how cool it looks?
It's usually broken down very clearly into two main areas: craftsmanship and performance.
Right, okay.
Craftsmanship is typically judged beforehand in a private session. Judges get up close, inspect the seams, the materials, the construction quality, the finishing, the paint job. Often, cosplayers have to bring progress photos or documentation to prove they made it themselves.
So that's the real deep dive into the technical skill.
A performance.
Perf-
Performance is all about the stage show. Stage presence, how well you embody the character, maybe a short skit or a choreographed routine, how you connect with the audience. Pure theater, basically.
And the scale varies wildly, right? From local cons to the big international ones?
Yeah, you've got everything from relaxed, fun local masquerades, which are often more about participation, right up to the super serious international contests like the World Cosplay Summit, WCS.
WCS seems like the gold standard. What makes it so intense?
It's pretty much the Olympics of cosplay, held every year in Nagoya, Japan. The rules are incredibly strict emphasis on complex stage performances, the construction has to be flawless, and the costumes must be almost entirely handmade by the competing team. Winning WCS is like the ultimate global recognition of your skills.
Wow. What's it like backstage at those big events? Must be incredibly tense.
It is high pressure, definitely. But the sources emphasize this amazing sense of camaraderie, too. You'll see rivals helping each other with last-minute repairs, quick hot glue fixes, safety pins holding things together right before they go on stage.
That's great.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of mutual respect for the work involved. Everyone knows what it took to get there, so they support each other, nerves and all.
That support system even gets formalized with things like the cosplay repair station, right?
Yeah. The Cosplay ER. It's brilliant and honestly essential. Volunteer-run booths stocked with all the emergency supplies, hot glue guns, epoxy, different tapes, sewing kits, safety pins, because costumes, especially big complex ones, will break down during a long convention day.
A lifesaver, I bet. And finally, you can make the most amazing costume, but if nobody sees it, photography must play a huge role.
Oh, absolutely crucial, especially now. Picture it didn't happen is kind of the motto. There's this whole ecosystem of specialized cosplay photographers.
Right.
They collaborate with cosplayers using sophisticated lighting, locations, and editing skills to create these stunning images that really make the cosplayer look like they stepped out of a movie or game. That visual element is what drives so much of the hobby's visibility online.
It really elevates the whole thing. And just to put a pin in how massive this has all become, the Guinness World Record for the biggest cosplay parade, set in 2019 in China. Over 1,700 costumed fans marching together.
Incredible scale. So when you pull it all together, cosplay really is this fascinating world where imagination literally takes physical form. It's research, it's engineering, it's art, and it's deeply personal expression. Ordinary people transforming into heroes, even just for a day, and finding community through that shared passion.
Yeah, we've covered a lot, from just two fans back in 1939 to these huge global events. We've looked at that tension between perfect accuracy and creative freedom and how vital that inclusive anyone can do this spirit is. It feels like the community values the journey, the making, just as much as the final result.
Which brings up a really interesting thought for the future, tying back to the materials and tech we discussed. You know, as things like 3D printing become even more accessible, cheaper, faster, how is that going to continue to change things, especially in competitions? What does handmade mean when complex parts can be digitally designed and printed? Will it lower the barrier for entry, which could be great? Or will it shift the focus even more towards digital design skills rather than traditional hands-on crafting? It makes you wonder what the next evolution of master cosplayer will look like.
That's a fascinating question to ponder. Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive, and the main message seems clear, right? As the community always says, cosplay is for everyone. If you feel inspired by a character, maybe just give it a try. Grab some craft foam, maybe learn to sew a seam or two. You might discover a whole new passion and definitely a welcoming community.